Welcome to the 2020 Georgia GMIS Fall Conference. Uh, we're glad you're all here and you're all safe. And what I'd like to do is actually, since we're not able to socially uh, network and be together, some of you might not know who I am, so I'd like to, give you a brief introduction of myself and my life, and then I'd like to talk about the importance of moving forward with this online learning experience, and then we'll turn it over to Jonathan to talk a little bit about our social presence. And Karen Knight will give us just a real short briefing on vendors throughout the virtual conference. And but one thing I'll do now before I get started is just let's talk about house rules. We'd love for you to keep your camera on if at all possible most of the time. We'd love for you to uh, stay muted unless it's appropriate for you to join in a conversation, and try to keep the confusion to a minimum throughout this process. So I'm Brett Lavender. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Macon-Bibb County Government. I'm married to Julie, 36 years next month, and I have a son. Yeah, I have a son, Barrett, who better graduate on December 15th from Mercer University's master's program in Atlanta. Uh, and my background is I spent 4 years in the Air Force, and then I went to work at Clayton County, where I had various positions, and retired from Clayton County. And I'd retired on a Friday, and the next Monday I started work at Macon-Bibb County Government as the CIO, and I've been there 4.5 years. Um, and I was thinking back when I was listening to the CGCIO cohort on uh, two things. Hobbies are important. My hobbies are aviation, relics and curios, old weaponry, and continuous learning. And I also thought back on people in my life at my workplace who had a great influence on me. One was Roger Fogelman in the Air Force, and we called him Mr. TO, Mr. Tech Order. And he was the person who instilled things like rules, systems, system diagnostics, uh, and how to be happy about a small success in life. And moving on to Clayton County, one person who's with me here now is Jason Brookins, where he instilled some things in me, such as loyalty, uh, the importance of being open-minded, and being a visionary, and one thing which is being confident. And I think he found out that one point in my life I had a bucket list, and one of those things was that I wanted to run in a marathon before I turned 50 or around 50. So we actually trained together for about 6 months, and no kidding, we ran the Atlanta Marathon, the ING Marathon, and I actually finished way behind Jason, but I finished. And one other person who at Macon Bibb County, who was he's no longer with us, Joe Nabhan, who was very important in my life because he was a good coworker and he was a good friend. He was a humble person with great integrity, and he was innovative and he was influential, and he had this way about him of, um, if he thought it was very important for you to take some action, he would never tell you that, but he would always start out the conversation with, in my opinion, you should do this, which was a great thing. um, and he and I talked the week before he passed away, and we used to talk about corny things, like I had all these family Norwegian sayings we would have, and um, one of those sayings was, "The morning has gold in its mouth." And if you think about that, every day you wake up is just full of opportunities, and that is something we talked about often. And if you want to know what my work priorities are, is essentially every workplace: safety's first, customer service is second, the show, keeping things organized and clean, and in presentations and systems working is third, and efficiency is fourth. And I think give you some background about myself and how I operate. The next thing I wanted to talk about is the importance of this online experience. It's a different thing. If you're not familiar with the platform we're on, Zoom, I suggest you experiment with it and play with it. Eliminate all the distractions you can that are around you. I know some of you are at your workplace. Please try to eliminate interruptions. Please try to focus on the curriculum. Uh, may if you have to find another location for tomorrow or the rest of the day that's more beneficial to you, that you know, I hope you blocked it out on your calendar. I hope you eliminated as many distractions as possible. Try every way possible to connect with other attendees. Take notes. Be old school. You know, I got my, I got my little book, my little, and I'm taking notes for everything I participate in. I hope you do the same so you can refer back to those notes in the future. Build in opportunities to make it a more pleasant experience. Have water, have snacks, have things around you. They're laughing at me right now, but I actually have a fan with oscillating fans sitting here in front of me just to make the environment cooler. Uh, you know, stand and stretch. Uh, when this is over with, review and rewatch anything that's recorded to help you out. And that's essentially how I wanted to get us started and get us introduced. And what I'd like for Jonathan to do is Jonathan has been working real hard with the Clayton County team for our web presence, but also creating some social media environment for us. And so what I'd like to do is, you know, Jonathan, if you could go ahead and talk about what you've done.
Thanks, Brett. So I think it's important that everybody know that we have a social presence on social media. We have our website. If you do not know it, or if you've not been to it, please go georgiagms.org. Go check it out. We're going to try to keep it fresh, keep it updated. What I did want to mention today was we do have a Facebook page for those who are Facebook users. Some people are, some people are not. But if you don't know about it, please go in there and like it so that you can stay kind of connected to whatever's put out there. I will make a challenge to everybody on the meeting today. We are going to do some things on that page in parallel. So there may be some little giveaways that happen or secret little things that one of the board members may say that is referenced on that page, that the answer will be there. So if you'll go put your like on there, check it out. The GMIS is going to be, the Georgia GMIS page will be up there and ready to go. But I would encourage everybody to like it, and I'm clear. So please go like the Facebook page for the Georgia GMIS page. We're trying to keep it updated. Again, there will be a few things that pop up there that you'll probably want to be aware of. And depending on what you learn, if you get a nugget of information that you think is valuable, please post it to that page. I think Brett is known to do a couple giveaways here and there, and maybe throw some gift cards our way on some of the best posts that we find. But you never know what will happen. We always had that random number generator, so there might be some kind of parallel relation to the Facebook page. So I would encourage everybody that's on Facebook to please go and like the Georgia GMIS Facebook page. I was going to share it, but I don't need to do that. You guys all know where it is. If you have any questions, you can throw in the chat for me if you'd like. Additionally, while we're talking about it, just to tag on to Brett's house rules, if everyone will right now go into your Zoom meeting settings and change your name to your full correct name, that will be super helpful, because we want to give you credit. And if we don't know if you're logged in as, I'll pick on Mike Hicks, M. Hicks. Go ahead and put Michael Hicks on the name. He did that for us to prove a point. So he did it on purpose. We'll just go there. But in the future, if you just change your name in your Zoom session to be your first and last name, that would be super helpful to us. That'll help you continue to get your credits. So I think that's all I've got. I'm going to pass it over to Karen, and Karen's going to talk a little bit about some other things.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Glad to see everyone this morning. I have 2 videos going, so what you're seeing is from a different device I'm using. Anyway, this afternoon from 4 to 6 p.m., we do have our vendor exhibit hall. You were sent out links earlier by Tiffany and with our UGA staff, who does a fantastic job for us, along with Mike Hurahan. They're both fantastic assets to the organization. But if you will please join us in the exhibit hall from 4 to 6, so we can thank the vendors and you can learn more about the products and services that they offer to our community. If you have any questions about those links, please send us a chat or email us somehow and let us know so we can get that squared away for you. But hopefully you will be able to join us this afternoon from 4 to 6 in the exhibit hall. And now I'll turn it back over to Brett.
Great. Thank you, Karen. So at this time, right before we get started, we want to announce that the Geek Track users need to please leave this session and go to their link. And so then we'll also introduce Sid Johnson, our instructor for the LGCIO leadership, assessing the political environment. And we're fortunate to have Sid back with us, and Sid will be with us all day. And we look forward to that. And given that, we'll turn that over to you, Sid.
Great. Thank you, Brett. And good morning, everyone. It's great to be back with you. Some of you participated in the first session, Understanding the Political Environment. Today is Assessing the Political Environment. And what I'd like to do is start with introductions. And we've got quite a few people here with us. So this is going to take a little time. So I'm going to ask that you be patient as we go through everybody. But I think it's important that everybody kind of weigh in and introduce themselves as we go through this. So I'm going to call your name. And if you would just say, hey, my name is, I'm such and such title at such and such place. And then we'll move on to the next place. So name, rank, and serial number basically is what we're asking for here. So Raymond Addix, we're going to start with you, and don't forget to unmute as you introduce yourself, and then remute when you're done. So Raymond, you want to take it, go first, please.
Okay, first of all, I go by Chris. It's only governments and schools that insist on using Raymond as my first name.
Yeah.
I'm the IT director for the city of Smyrna. I've been here about 20 years now.
All right, thank you, Chris. Next is Victoria Barrett.
Good morning. I'm Victoria Barrett from Columbus Waterworks, and I'm the IS manager here.
All right, thank you, Victoria. Michael Blanchard. All right, I don't see or hear Michael. Michael, are you muted? All right, we're going to move on to Deborah Bragdon.
Hi, my name is Deborah Bragdon, and I work at Glenn County Board of Commissioners, and I'm the interim IT director. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Deborah. Benjamin Bregman.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Ben Brigman. I'm the IT director for the city of Garden City for the last 12 years.
All right. Thank you, Ben. Jason Brookins.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jason Brookins. I'm the IT director for Clayton County, and I've been with the county for 24 years.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Reginald Brown.
How you doing, Reginald Brown, City of Hampton?
All right. Thank you, Reginald. Joe Bice.
Hey, good morning. Joseph Bice here. I'm the IT manager for the Cherokee County Water and Sewage Authority in Canton, Georgia.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Daniel Campbell.
Hey, this is Dan Campbell. Good morning, everyone. IT systems administrator for the city of Smyrna. Been here about 8 years, a little over 8 years now.
All right, Dan, glad you're with us. Aaron Cartwright.
Good morning. My name is Erin Cartwright. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the Georgia Department of Community Affairs.
All right, glad you're with us, Erin. Brian Conley.
Hey, Brian Conley here, IT Director for Bryan County. Been here about 18 years.
Okay, thank you, Brian. John Dawson.
Good morning, John Dawson, City of Albany, Georgia. I'm the Network Operations Manager. I've been with the city just over a decade.
All right, great. Thank you, John. Jesse Dobbs. All right, how about David Frizzell?
Good morning, I'm David Frizzell. I'm the IT manager for the city of Milton, and I've been there for 10 years.
All right, thank you, David. And I guessed your last name right.
Thank you.
Julianne Hartman. All right, Julianne doesn't have a mic, so she just sent a text, a chat to everybody. Thank you, Julianne. How about Michael Hicks?
So Mike Hicks is moderating the Geek Track right now. He's
okay. All right.
Second Vice President and been with College Park for a long time.
All right. Thanks for filling in. Larry Hobbs.
Hello, I'm Larry Hobbs. I'm the GIS manager for Columbia County. Been in the county for almost 25 years. .mgis. I recently came to the light out of the dark side of IT. Joke, joke. I'm the XO here, trying to keep this motley crew in check.
All right. Thank you, Larry, and good to see you again. Grace Jansen.
She may have mic issues as well. Her boss, who's sitting right here, is really cheap.
Okay. All right. I'm going to mark her then. Samuel Jenkins. All right. Karen, you want to introduce yourself again?
Hey, good morning. Karen Knight with the City of Douglasville. I have been here with the city 27 years as communications coordinator, and I'm also the Director of Corporate Sponsorship for Georgia GMIS.
All right. Thank you, Karen. Aaron Costio. Just butchered that one. Aaron?
No, you did fine, Sid.
Okay.
It's cost you, like it'll cost you if you mess it up.
Gotcha.
Kidding.
All right.
My name is Aaron Costu. I am from Lowndes County Board of Commissioners in Valdosta, Georgia. It's extreme South Georgia. We're on the Florida border. I've been here for just under 20 years, and I am the Director of Technology.
All right, great. Good to meet you, Aaron. Brett, you just introduced yourself, so I'm going to move on to Jimmy Lee. All right, Brian Linton.
Good morning. I'm Brian Linton. I'm with the city of McDonough. I've been here 6 years. I'm the network administrator.
All right, thank you, Brian. Jeremy Miles.
I'm Jeremy Miles with the Columbus Consolidated Government, and I am the Technical Operations Manager.
All righty. Jamie Montalvo.
Good morning. I'm Jamie Montalvo. I work for the Clayton County Board of Commissioners. I'm the IT Assistant Director, along with Jason Brookins. I've been at the county for about 6 years.
All right. Thank you, Jamie. Good to meet you. Donald Moody.
That might be Tim Moody.
I've got a Donald and a Tim, so go ahead, Tim.
Hey, Don Moody, MakeABib IT. I'm System and Network Manager for MakeABib. I've been here 19 years.
All right. Thank you, Don. Now on to Tim.
All right. Good morning, Tim Moody, Senior Director of IT for the beautiful city of Savannah. I've been here for all of 8 months. Prior to that, I spent 10 years with the University System of Georgia, most recently as the Chief Technology Officer at Georgia Southern.
All right, great. Thank you, Tim. Bruce Patterson. All right, Bruce, I'm going to move on. Jamie Pownell.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Jamie Pownell. I am with Henry County. I am the operations administrator here, and I've been here for about 14 years.
All right, I've got Brewster Rayner.
Also known as Clark.
I thought so. Is Clark here? All right, not yet. We're going to move on to John Redmond.
Hey, I'm John Redmond. I go by Darian, network engineer for Columbus Consolidated Government.
All right, thank you. I think I'm going to go back to Bruce Patterson.
Yes, Bruce Patterson, Rockdale County. Good morning, everyone. Apologies, I failed to unmute my mic. Currently the Senior Systems Administrator and Acting Operations Manager here at Rockdale County.
All right, thank you, sir. Jonathan, you want to reintroduce yourself?
Sure, why not? I'm Jonathan Reich. I'm with the City of Gainesville, and I've been there about coming up on 4 years now.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. William Rutherford.
Good morning, William Rutherford. I'm with the Georgia Department of Agriculture. I'm the Chief Information Officer. I've been with the department for a little over 4 years, and I've been with state government for about 16 years.
All right, thank you, William. Alex Santiago. Alex, are you muted?
Yeah, the space bar is not working for whatever reason. Alex on Harris County, Georgia. I've been the IT director here.
All right, thank you, Alex. Stephanie Short. All right, I don't hear Stephanie. We're going to go to Stephen Sykes.
Also known as Steve Sykes. Good morning, everyone. We're so glad to have you. I'm with the city of McDonough, Georgia, and have the current technology services director. I had to look on the wall to make sure what the title was, and been here 8 years.
All right, thank you, Steve. Clint Stanley.
Good morning, I'm Clint Stanley, the IT director for Liberty County, Georgia. I've been here about 28 years.
All right, could barely hear you, Clint, but I think it came over, just to let you know. Edmund Strozier. Edmund. All right, how about Takia Thomas?
Good morning. My name is Takia Thomas. I'm with the Clay County Board of Commissioners. I've been here about 9 years, and my role is the technical training coordinator.
All right, thank you, Takia. Nathan Todd.
I'm Nathan Todd with the city of Douglasville. I'm an IT technician with the IT department. I've been here 12 years now.
All right, and we got Forrest Toll.
Hey, it's Forrest Tolley. I took Brett's advice. My staff should all be at a location other than work. I've got my bottle so that I can make it through the day, and my chair relaxed, got 3 computer screens. I'm actually wearing clothes though, so that's a good thing. But I'm very relaxed. IT director at Columbus Consolidated Government, but I would expect that if you see my staff, they'll be at various locations other than the government center tower.
All right, thank you, Forrest. Appreciate that.
We thank you for wearing clothes for us.
And finally, David West.
Good morning, I'm David West, network engineer in the IT department and supervisor of technical services.
All right, thank you, David. I appreciate everybody doing that. It kind of ties us together a little bit and get to know each other, and helps us out a little bit as we get started. So thank you for doing that. Appreciate your patience. Again, my name is Sid Johnson, and I've been in state government for many years. I moved over to the Carl Vinson Institute of Government about 3 years ago, and it's very much a pleasure to be with you and explore our political environment and how we work in it. So what I'm going to do is share my screen real quick and bring this up.
Hey, Sid Johnson, it's Mike Howerhan. Just real quick to let folks know, there will be some other names that you see on your grid. We have a number of folks from the Georgia Center that are helping Georgia GMIS and UGA put this on. So if you see names that you don't recognize or they didn't introduce themselves, they are our support staff from the Georgia Center, along with Tiffany Sargent, who works with me to put this on. Just wanted to let you know what who those other names were for. Thanks, Sid.
Good. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you bringing that up. As I already said, this is session 2. The first one was understanding the political environment, and we're going to review that very quickly in just a minute. But today, again, is assessing the political environment. And what do I mean by assessing the political environment? And first, it's what's going on out there in our environment that's going to impact us on the inside, either personally or organizationally. And we're also going to be assessing ourselves because we interact with that environment. We try to impact that environment. So a lot of what we're going to be doing today is assessing ourselves and our impact on the political environment. We're going to be looking at some models to help direct our assessment that we do on the environment and ourselves, but also our thinking. It's going to shape how we ought to be thinking about politics and the political environment. We're going to be having a lot of breakout groups today, so hopefully we'll have a lot of conversation, share our thoughts, get ideas from other people. So I think the breakout groups are going to be a very important part. Today is a workshop approach, and in that we're going to be doing a lot of work. You're going to be doing a lot of work. And ultimately, I'd love for you to walk away today with some kind of action plan on how you might interact with the political environment a little bit differently and more successfully. And so I did provide everybody with a workbook. I hope you've already printed that out and have it with you, because we're going to be referring back to that quite a bit. And why are we assessing the political environment? Why are we talking about this today? And the bottom line for me is, how are we going to get things done? And as you're going to see in a minute, it is very, very difficult to get things done in the political environment, and that is by design. It's difficult for a reason. And so how do we as public leaders get things done in this crazy environment? And so that's what today is about. And hopefully we're going to increase our skills and ability and awareness and ability to assess the political environment today, which is going to help your career and your success in your roles. So first of all, I want to start out giving a quick review of understanding the political environment, which was our last session, because I think it provides an important foundation for what we're going to do today. So let's launch out into that. So first of all, what we talked about last time is the fact that change happens. It is a constant in our lives. This change causes misalignment between our organizations and what's all the people out there in the external environment. And because change creates conflict and ambiguity, it creates a tremendous amount of risk. We as humans react to this change, so there's a lot of emotion. I've already mentioned the misalignment, but because change creates these things, leadership is critical in periods of high change. And I've got to say, we're in a period of high change, no doubt about it, particularly in the IT arena. And y'all have been doing a great job responding to the challenges of 2020. So I want to commend you right off the bat for the job you're doing. So item number 1, change happens and it causes misalignment and a whole lot of opportunities for leadership. Number 2, as we respond to change, decisions are made in a rich diversity of opinion. Political decisions are not technical formulas. Which movie should we go to tonight, dear? There's no formula to answer that question. It's opinion, it's values, it's interest. And so these are the things that decisions must weigh through, all of these differences of opinions and the conflict that results from that. And when we make a decision, particularly in a political environment and maybe even at home, there are winners and losers. And And the things that kind of guide the decisions that we make are our relationships, the strength of relationships, and the norms of dealing with conflict. And sometimes we handle those well, and sometimes we don't. And I've got to say, this area, this political diversity is kind of a defining piece for our system of government. Everybody has a right to their opinion. We even have a right to free speech. And we're supposed to have some level of tolerance for other people and their ability to have a different opinion. And despite what we see on the news every day, this is a value that we have in this country of having differences of opinions and being tolerant of those. Relatedly, a colleague, Philip Boyle, has done some work around what are some common values that we have as Americans. And there are 4 main values that we have: liberty, prosperity, equality, and community. And any of these, in any of the major controversies that we have in our country, at least 2 of these values are at play. And typically, as we talked about in the last session, one side of the argument is trying to advance one of these values. The other side is trying to protect one of these values. And I think it's helpful to remember that as we get into policy debates, arguments about what we should do or shouldn't do. This is helpful in understanding the motives of the other side and how it helps us be a little bit more tolerant in our debates. So next, we talked about last session the fact that our founding fathers understood this conflict, understood the rich diversity of opinions. And so they, in their wisdom, distributed authority. They took power and broke it up. And they gave us a system of checks and balances. They gave us shared power, formal processes of decision-making, all of this to distribute and slow down government, as I mentioned earlier on today. And so this protects us from one person making all the decision. It requires numerous people who have shared value to agree on what ought to happen next. And although it's working well, it slows things down. It causes deliberation and collaboration, consensus building, compromise. It also creates huge inefficiencies as public agencies try to address what I call the democratic demands of our system, whether that's public input, due process, whatever it may be. So distributed authority is a key aspect of our system of government, which we as public leaders have to overcome to some extent and bring that various power players together in an agreement on what we ought to do. So next is public sector leadership is needed for results. How in the world, in a world of divided authority, do we get anything done? So we need public leaders who can build a consensus of agreement for proposed action and sustain that consensus over time, which is critical. You may be able to pull something together for today, but is that consensus sustainable? And Michael Moore wrote a book, and the triangle here you see, he argues that public leaders have a vision for public value. They look at the external environment and understand the public value they offer. They can build legitimacy and support by going out and with the folks with authority and getting the resources needed to deliver. And then the third thing public leaders do is actually deliver on the promise that they have made on that public value. So that's very important to understand. And we're going to be unpacking this a little bit more today as we go through. Because of distributed authority in politics, you have to know the players. They may be partners or people who give you resources. They may be advocates, even customers, general citizens. You got to know the players and who's out there, the stakeholders who are impacting you and your ability to get something done. Next, we talked about the fact that public leaders have to cross boundaries. If you're supposed to get agreement around a diverse group of folks that are outside of your boundaries, you got to cross them to get to them. And so how we look at the world has to change. We can't work with our heads down. Getting the day-to-day activities done, yes, you got to do that, but you got to look at the big picture and work closely with these stakeholders and meet the needs of your customer groups. So public leaders cross boundaries. They have to get out of their chair and move around. That's very, very important. Next, we talked about the fact that public leaders have dual competence. They have to have certainly technical skills, how they get things done, subject matter expertise, but they also have to have political skills. And that's what we're going to be focusing on today is these political skills. And we also talked about the fact that public leaders have to realize that there are political groups and technical groups are largely the bureaucrats in our organizations. And they have a different language than the political folks. They have a different set of motivations than the political folks. And so understanding the two groups and speaking to the two groups is very, very important. And we also talked about building bridges between those two groups and serving as a translator, an interpreter, and negotiator between the two groups is very, very important. We also said in conclusion that public leadership is very difficult. We gave a story about hard things are hard. This is a sign on a previous president's desk that his staff gave him as a reminder that the tough things are tough. And working in a political environment and pulling the consensus together is very, very difficult. And it's also risky. We talked about public leadership has personal risk, and it's not just you, but it's also your staff that shares that risk with you as you make decisions. And so I want to pause real quick, and that concludes what we talked about last time as a very quick reminder. But I want to pause and ask if, have you seen these things in action lately? How have you experienced these things? And I'd like for a few of us to share maybe some misalignments that may have been going on in today's environment. So let me pause just a minute, and anybody want to share some thoughts or reaction to what I just went through? So no anybody seen some misalignment between your organization and the external environment that's been going on, the changes that have happened over 2020? Or let me re-ask, have you had to realign in 2020 to the external environment?
So Sid, I'll just tell you, I don't know if I would say realign. I would say actually reinvent how we do our business and how we have to be available to the public and how we have to kind of rethink citizen engagement throughout this year to make sure that they're staying engaged and connected and not just, making decisions in a vacuum.
Yeah. So if one of the democratic demands is public input, how do you do that in an age of COVID? And I think that's a good point, Jason. Thank you for sharing that. Differences of opinion. Have we seen that over the last campaign cycle?
Sid, I would throw out this example, I'm not sure if if it applies, but one of the kind of juggling acts that I've had to work with in the last year is, and I'm sure other people have as well, is CARES funding and the political dynamics around funding from the CARES Act and how it can be applied and how IT can get in line for some of it. And that's just been a kind of a changing, the rules keep changing and criteria keep changing. And so aligning what we do and the things we can spend money on to support a remote workforce to qualify for CARES funding has been a constant game changer.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, Tim. Anybody else related to that?
I think in the political environment of COVID, just when everything happened and everybody returning back to work, I think nobody could make an official decision about if people were going to come back to the office or continue to work from home.
Great. No one person can make that decision, right? Yeah. Therefore, nobody makes the decision. Yeah. What about inefficiencies in government? Have y'all seen that fact? I think, Jamie, you just alluded to it, actually, now that I think about it. That indecision creates a lot of inefficiencies. So, and let me ask you this. Have you seen or do you experience differences between the political groups and the technical groups? Have you had to, do you see the difference between the two, and have you had to bridge between the two or translate between the two?
That's something we have to do all the time, really. I mean, you know, there's no technical requirement for the people that get elected to our political bodies. And so you get people from a lot of different backgrounds, and many of them don't understand technology. And so we spend a great amount of our time explaining things to them about, you know, why you can't just roll out 300 MiFis to school students and expect them to work and expect them not to be abused and that sort of thing. Politically, it looks great to be offering that, but technically it's a kind of a nightmare.
Yep. Thank you, Chris, for that. That's a great example. And to your point, I mean, we're constantly negotiating between the two groups and trying to work out something that's going to be real and really help, something we can deliver on. So Chris, I appreciate that. So these are the issues that we as public leaders have to deal with. This is the environment we work in, and it's the environment you are called to lead and be successful in. And you are to make things happen and achieve goals, contribute to the success of your organization. And you certainly want your career to progress. And so that's what today is about, is hopefully helping you get things done in a political environment and advance your career, both professionally and personally. So what I'd like to do today is start with a quote and then break you up into some groups to talk about this quote. And here's Jeffrey Pfeiffer. He was actually a business professor. And he said, "I am increasingly convinced that people who have power are not necessarily smarter than others. Beyond a certain level of intelligence and level in the hierarchy, everyone is smart. What differentiates people is their political savvy and their skill." And so what I'd like to do is divide you into breakout groups, and Cassie is going to help me with that. They're going to be random groups. So first of all, I want you to reintroduce yourself within the small group. And I want you to pick a facilitator for the group, somebody to represent the group when we come back together. And that person, ideally, you can choose any way you want to, but ideally it'll be the person with the birthday closest to today. That'll be the facilitator. And once you've done those things, I want you to talk about a few things. One is, what's your reaction to this quote? Do you agree with it? Do you disagree with it? So share your reactions to this quote, and then talk about what political savvy really is. What are we talking about when we say political savvy? And in your workbooks, you can make some notes. So we're looking at page 1 in your workbooks. And so Cassie, if you would, Jason, I don't know if you need to make any comments at this point, but Cassie, if you would break everybody up into groups. We've got about 20 minutes set aside for the conversation. When you're done, you can always come back, but we'll pull you back about, let's say 10 o'clock, right at 10 o'clock.
Okay, and just a side note for anyone who's co-host, you don't have to join the group, but it will automatically push you into a group. So just, you don't have to actually join it though, if you don't want to.
Okay.
So I'm about to launch them and then you'll be able to join.
So I hope the breakout groups went well for everybody. I think a couple of glitches we had to work through on our end in terms of assigning folks, but I think we got those resolved. And hopefully you were able to come up with a facilitator. So I'd like for, we've got about 8 groups, so I don't want go through all the groups, but I'd like for a few groups to share what they talked about in their breakout groups. Particularly, did you agree with this quote? Does it ring true in the real world? And what is political savvy? So would one group like to share their conversation?
I'll go with our group, this is Forrest Tully.
Yep.
We agreed, but we said that the statement wasn't broad enough because we actually feel that a lot of political savvy and skill might come, and we use the example of several people, but one would be like you had a Rockefeller. So when he owned literally 1/3 of the gross national product of the U.S. and the U.S. borrowed money from him, whether he was smart or not, he was rich. And we see it in this election too. And we see it in every election. And they even have a phrase, follow the money. One of our people said, you follow the money and you follow who's really controlling the politics. So I'm not so sure that everything I think he said is true, except I think he should have added and follow the money. So,
Yep.
so, because a lot of the CARES Act, a lot of the things that go in, a lot of the pork barreling, we wouldn't have all these political terms if it wasn't also follow the money. So we didn't disagree with anything. We just thought it should add something more to the effect that, and it helps if you have $100 billion in today's world, that also helps your political positioning.
Yep. That's a great point, Forrest. And we're going to touch on that in just a minute as well. But yeah, money is definitely a part of it. And so good. Thank you for that. Did y'all talk about what political savvy is?
We did. We talked again, using the example, we used other examples, but I wanted to go back to Rockefeller since there wouldn't be anybody for or against him since he died a long time ago. He had a lot of political savvy along with his money, but it wasn't enough savvy to stop Teddy Roosevelt from busting up Standard Oil. So you talk about political savvy. So savvy is the ability to bring a group together that has a majority of votes in our country that would get what you want done. So political savvy is somehow corralling the cats to get them to go your way. And Roosevelt was able to, in spite of all of Rockefeller's money, bust up Standard Oil. So he got the common people to get together and use these antitrust laws that were really intended, after the Civil War. So that's a case of one person having political savvy, then losing it to someone that had a little more political savvy.
Yeah, or power. Yep. All right. Thank you, Forrest. That's very good. How about another group? Another group want to share? Did you agree with this quote?
This is Brett. I'll be glad to share. Our group
Okay.
was Chris Addicks, Victoria Barrett, Clint Stanley, and myself. And initially, we started out talking about statements of quotes of truism. But then we talked about how there are some people in politics who are less smarter. Um, those without an agenda who actually become destructive or interfere with operations. And occasionally there are those people who are just there to do good, and they know how to maneuver and make alliances and negotiate where they use whatever power they develop for the good of the whole, or the good of the customers, or the good of the organization. And those with the skill to negotiate or have, um, Victoria mentioned, emotional intelligence to do what's in the best interest of the group, even if it might initially seem to be not the thing to do. When we talked about them having a rate increase when we have a time of economic downturn, because it's necessary. Building the political clout to pass something like that during a downturn in the economy is pretty impressive to me. And we talked about, as far as learning from others in the group, that a good politician works hard to build support, while others pander and just try to satisfy the outcry of the few rather than think about the good of the whole. And we even got as far as to talking about how our organizations handle the current environment differently. Some of us closed for COVID. Some of us did not close. Some of us furloughed. Some of us talked about furlough. Some of us did not furlough. So it's interesting, the political reactions that have, maybe people didn't take enough time to evaluate the situation and look at statistically what our revenue change was, those type of things. But I think all of our environments have the same type of politics, but also it's situational how the politicians deal with things. Some political teams are less mature than others, and some have worked together for a long time. And even though they have differences, they figure out what the priorities are and how to achieve those goals by negotiating and working together.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Brett, thank you for sharing that. And in the interest of time, we're going to move on, and we'll hear from other groups later in the day. So when we talk about politics, a lot of times we have bad taste in our mouth. And some of us, or most of us, don't want to be referred to as, oh, he's so political, she's so political. That would be a derogatory term in a lot of ways. And so popular beliefs about politics, you can read these here, manipulation, power plays, hidden agendas, all of these things can be a part of politics. And but I want to suggest that that we look at politics a little bit differently and from a positive standpoint. And they can include being diplomatic. How about supportive and not phony? How about professional, problem solver, collaborative, loyal to boss and the organization, and an analyzer of the situation and the environment. So I would love to be referred to in these terms rather than the negative political terms. So I want us to think about politics and to some extent overcome negative views of politics, to take our stand as public leaders in a political environment. I do want to point out, we've talked about the technical versus political, and I saw that this quote included that. Smart is the technical. They really know their business, but adding the political side to that as well, both are required to be very successful. And we're going to talk more about that today. So political savvy, an important leadership skill, no matter what environment you're in, business or government. It consists of informal influence strategies that help accomplish your mission and goal. Political skills can be learned. Some of you do the political stuff without even thinking about it. You've done it for a long time. You're naturally wired that way. You've got some level of emotional intelligence. Those of us who don't have that can learn it and can go through the motions and have some level of political proficiency to complement our technical skills that we have. And so our agenda today is full, and I'll tell you at the outset, all of this is in your workbook. We will probably not get to go through all of this, but I will tee it all up so you can do it on your own time later on. To round out this segment, I want us to look at this political skills model by Baddeley and James, and I think it brings out something that Forrest shared in his comments. In this model, in the vertical axis, you see political awareness. Is it high or is it low? And in Baddeley and James's vernacular, reading, is it, how strong are we in our ability to read people and agendas, the room? Can we read a room real well? Do we understand what's going on around us? So are we politically aware? And on the horizontal axis, I call it the ethical orientation. Are we about ourselves and enriching ourselves, or are we about others and serving the broader community? And so as you lay out these two axes, you've got 4 types of political skills that come out. And in the lower left-hand corner, you have inept. Oh, and let me say, don't get too wrapped up about the animals. They're cute, but let's focus on kind of the labels. Inept, so that's low awareness and you're worried about yourself. Next is innocent, where you have low awareness, but you're about others. Your ethical orientation is about others. Next is clever, so high awareness and a self-orientation. And then you've got the wise, which is the high awareness and the ethical orientation toward others. So this is a way to think about our own political skills and where we are. And I've got to say, well, we'll go to the next piece. Another way of looking at this is the political awareness is the means, the ability, the savvy and the skills to help get something done in an environment. And whereas the ethical orientation is why you do it. What are the ends that are associated, the goals I'm trying to achieve? Are those goals related to me and my own personal desires, or is it for the broader community? And in reality, if we're honest, if I'm honest, I'm all over this model at any given time. I can be very selfish, or my personal demands are very high. And sometimes I can be very aware, sometimes I'm not aware at all about what's going on around me. So what I'd like for you to do is individually is think about where you are on this and maybe different situations of where you may be on this model. And another thing you may want to think about is others in your sphere of influence. Where are they? Are there some foxes out there, some clever folks that you need to be aware of? Are there some folks who are not politically aware that you might need to help along a little bit? So I'm going to give you 2 minutes, and then we're going to break up into groups and share your reactions to this model and what it says. So 2 minutes. Place yourself on this, think about different situations and your coworkers. And we're just going to stay right here, 2 minutes. You out in your groups and just share your reactions to this model. Any pushback on this model is fine. Talk about how you place yourself in it in various situations. So Cassie, if you would break everybody up, and we're going to do this for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Okay. Well, welcome back. Appreciate your participation in the small groups. I'd like for another group to share your reaction and conversation around this Badley and James political skills model. So would a group like to share their conversation? Maybe a group we hadn't heard from yet.
All right, I think one of the things we decided was that they should have another category in there called mushroom, for people who are just in the dark. With IT being basically, for the most part, not a public-facing part of the city or county, it's a political interaction is not something that we have on a day-to-day basis. So any kind of muscles we have there might atrophy a little bit. But where we find ourselves most, at least in our group, was that we're pretty high on the ethical orientation scale and low to middling on the political awareness scale. Where we function best, I think, is where we take an approach of partnerships with other departments. Our mentality is help me, help you, kind of a thing. So the political awareness is not just serving ourselves, but serving the goals of the organization and helping other people meeting their goals. I mean, that's our primary purpose anyway. We are a support department. So we need to be able to communicate with others on their level, not necessarily just our own. So we have people who aren't technically savvy, who are politically savvy, that we need to kind of meet them on their level. And as far as political awareness goes, we need to grow in that. I definitely do.
Good. Well, thank you, David, for sharing that. That's very helpful. How about one more group? Would another group like to share their conversation?
We'll go. In our group, we felt overall that the political awareness was middle to high, especially at work. And of course, this is in a work setting we're talking about.
Yeah.
That it would be middle to high, and ethical orientation for others, because we are a support group. You know, the political need, our political needs are for everyone else because we support the rest of the county. So whenever we need something, it's not for our department generally, it's for the rest of the county. So that's mainly where we fall.
Okay, all right. Well, appreciate that, Jamie. And at this point, I'm going to, we're going to take a break. And again, I appreciate everybody's involvement in the small groups. I think moving forward on today, the small groups are going to be more and more important. And so we're going to take a 15-minute break. Let's come back at 10:45. And Cassie, I believe we are going to break up the, I think we're going to change up the breakup groups next time. So we're going to get a mix of folks that you can deal with and talk to. So 15 minutes, come back at 10:45. Thank you.
And like the Facebook page, there'll be a good reason to do that here in the next minute or two. So please go like the Facebook page, put a post on what's your creature comfort for the next few minutes, and you will be glad you did.
Or don't, because I want to win.
Okay, go like it anyways, Larry. The benefit of flooding your own building, though.
Well, let's go ahead and get started. Appreciate everybody coming back. I want to make sure everybody's got the workbook because we're going to be using it pretty heavily here in just a minute. So if you don't have your workbook with you or access online, shoot us a chat and we'll try to help you out there. So far this morning, we've talked about the importance of political savvy. We reviewed the last session we did as a foundation. You've mapped yourselves on a political skills model. And now we're going to look at what is political savvy. And Jason's going to bring up a video in just a minute that we're going to look at. And we're going to pause. The Colin Dunn is the guy who does the video. And he kind of shares what political savvy is and does a good job with it, in my opinion. And he's going to share 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 characteristics of political savvy. And we're going to stop after each segment. And if you look at page 4 in your workbook, you're going to see just a simple assessment of your own political savvy. There's nothing special about this assessment. It's something I just put together in response to the video, but it's just a way to kind of assess your own political savvy in these 6 particular areas. And so we're going to go through the whole video, stopping after each segment. You assess yourself on that particular segment, that characteristic, and then we're going to break out into groups at the end, and I'll set that up when we're done with the whole video. So Jason, are we ready for the video?
Yep, give me just a sec.
All right. Jason, if you would just stop it after after each segment.
Okay.
I served a career in the United States Army. My last assignment was at the Eisenhower School, where I was a professor of behavioral science and I taught leadership.
Okay.
When I got out of the Army, I decided to form a company that would help leaders build winning teams. I hope that this video helps you be all you can be, for yourself and for the team. Today's subject is political savvy. When I was at my 25-year mark in government service, I found myself in a field operating agency which had a single line item in the DoD budget. That meant I had to defend my budget in front of 10 senior people, hard-nosed people whose job it was to take money away from me. To make matters worse, that particular year, there was supposed to be a 10% budget cut for all agencies. What to do? I asked around and mingled, and I found somebody who told me, go see Bob, maybe he can help you. Well, I found Bob's office in the Pentagon. He wasn't there, but his assistant was. I struck up a conversation with his assistant and got the valuable intelligence that Bob liked to eat at a certain snack bar in the Pentagon. He liked the bratwurst there. When Bob showed up a little while later, I invited him to lunch, told him it was on me. As it turns out, Bob loved to take rookies like me under his wing and show them the budget process. At the end of lunch, he told me, go visit these 3 committee members. Give them your proposal. I did that. A few weeks later, we had the big meeting. I walked in all nervous, unsure of the outcome. And before I could speak, Bob interrupted and said, you know, I've already seen this proposal. It makes a lot of sense. 2 other committee members nodded and they dismissed me without me saying a word. I found out a few days later that I got everything I asked for in my budget. I didn't know it then, but what I was demonstrating was political savvy. See, what political savvy is it's not politics. It's not backroom scheming and intrigue. It's simply knowing the culture, knowing the landscape of your organization, and every organization's a little different. It's also paying attention to people and what's going on in your organization. It's also enabling yourself to be all the best you can be and to serve your publics the best way you can. It's about being better at your job. What I'm going to do today is take you through 6 secrets of political savvy people. Now on the screen here, you see a guy telling a secret to a young woman, but truth be told, they're not going to be secrets because I'm going to lay them out for you right now. The first one is practice situational awareness. The second one is focus on relationships. The third is build a dynamic network. The fourth is partner with the boss and the boss's boss. The fifth is regulate your impulse behavior. And finally, anticipate change. Let's start with practicing situational awareness. What is that? Well, first it's knowing the culture. It's knowing the landscape. It's knowing what behavior is acceptable and what is not acceptable. It's knowing what your wiggle room is in making decisions. It's also knowing what minefields to avoid, What places that if you go there, you do so at your own peril. How do you find that out? Go to the coffee pot. Ask questions, listen to people talking, and you'll pick it up. Secondly, learn the key decision makers. The people making the decisions aren't always the boss or the bosses. Sometimes they're people that influence the boss, people on whom the boss or bosses rely on their counsel. Know who those people are. Thirdly, mingle strategically. What do I mean by that? Well, you have optional meetings that happen all the time, you know, celebrations, birthday parties, promotion parties, etc. Go to them. Meet the people there. Get to know the people behind the job descriptions that you work with or you think you might work with at some point in the future. Also, mingle strategically in a formal setting, just as I did when I tried to find out how to work the budget. If I didn't mingle strategically and find out who Bob was and meet with him offline, I wouldn't have known that those 3 meetings with those committee members were the important 3 meetings I had to have before the big meeting. Also, notice nonverbals. Start with yourself. How do you come across at meetings? If you're the kind of person that goes to a meeting and you like to get real comfortable and lean back in the chair and kind of look at the ceiling, that's fine if that's how you're comfortable, but what message are you sending if you do that? Could you possibly be sending the message that you don't care about the speaker or about the team as a whole? Very possibly. Let me give you a tip. After an important meeting, find someone you trust and ask them, how did I come across? Am I coming across as a team player? Am I coming across as interested? You know, am I looking at the speakers when they're talking? What are your impressions? You might learn something about yourself and might find a way to change your body language to leave a better impression at the next meeting. The next secret is focus on relationships.
All right, can you pause it?
You know.
All right, thank you, Jason. So what I'd like for y'all to do is go to your workbook, page 4, and just under situational awareness, just think about what you just heard. And these 4 questions are going to kind of help you assess yourself in situational awareness. However, I would suggest that you add any other comments or thoughts that you had along the way that might relate to your situational awareness. So don't let these 4 questions be the whole of your assessment of your situational awareness. And I would suggest that don't think about it in terms of just your IT unit. What's your situational awareness outside of your IT unit? What is it, your situational awareness related to your customer units or your city or county as a whole and what the situation is there? So let me give you just a couple of minutes just to assess yourself based on page 4, situational awareness. Let's just go ahead and crank the video back up.
Years ago in a presidential election, one of the candidates had a sign made and he read every day when he got up in the morning, and the sign said, "It's the economy, stupid," like right here on the screen. To remind him that when he went to talk to people and gave his stump speeches, to talk about the economy, because that's what the American people cared about. Well, in political savvy, the equivalent is, it's the relationship, silly. It's all about the relationship. The relationship is is the glue that holds people together on a team. The relationship is how things get done. Let me give you a couple of tips. One of them is treat everyone with respect. Don't get hung up on rank. We've all heard the story about the guy who goes to visit a senior person and ignores the executive assistant, only to find out later that the executive assistant is more than an executive assistant. That person is a confidant of the senior person, an action officer. Don't make that mistake. Give everybody the respect they deserve. Also, show genuine appreciation for people. If someone does a good job on your team, even if you had nothing to do with that project, show appreciation for that person. If someone helps you or gives you some counsel that works out, get back to that person and tell them how much you appreciate what they did for you. Also, show your boss appreciation. If your boss does something that you really appreciate, that you like, let that person know about it. Tell her. You know, a lot of times bosses don't get much feedback, and they appreciate it more than you realize. The next thing we need to talk about is identifying outside stakeholders and prioritizing. Every organization has stakeholders, people outside the team, outside the organization even, on whom they depend for their success. Who are those people? And you can't take care of all of them equally, so what's the priority? What's the pecking order? How do you find that out? Talk to the boss. Listen to the boss when the boss talks. Bosses' priorities will direct your prioritization of those stakeholders. Also, don't interact with people only when you need something from them. Those stakeholders we just identified, the first time you meet them shouldn't be when you come in and you need something from them. It should be a time when you're just going by to see them and asking them about their interests. In fact, maybe even doing some homework and finding out what their interests are. Zig Ziglar, a famous motivational speaker, said something I think that's very appropriate for us. He said, the only way to get what you want in life is to find enough people and give them what they want. It's counterintuitive, but you know, and I think in your heart, that is a true statement. Let me give you a tip. Draw a relationship map of you and your organization. Now, here I've got a map with myself at the center. That's me, Colin. And I've got lines going to various people. You use your own legend. For example, on this map, I have a short line between me and Joe to show that I've got a good relationship with Joe. But over here, look how far away I am from Sue, and yet Sue might be more integral to what it is I do at work than Joe is. So maybe I need to shorten that line with Sue. If this line here between me and the stakeholder wasn't there, maybe I needed to establish that. The point is, map it out. Draw it out on a piece of paper. It'll help direct your time as you try to improve and enhance relationships on your team and outside your team. The next secret is to build a dynamic network. Now, this picture.
All right, likewise, just take a couple of minutes and evaluate yourself on relationships. And I would have you focus on really the last two. What are your relationships with external stakeholders, not just in your IT unit, not just within your particular workspace, but how about externally with your partners, with your customers, other partners that you might have from a day-to-day standpoint? And also your level of sincerity, transparency in those relationships. Spend a minute thinking about those two. Looking at network.
Picture shows people standing in circles with connected lines, and it's not quite that formal, but you know it's very important. The first tip I want to leave you with on this is go back to your relationship map. Go back to that map and ask yourself, who on the map is the kind of person that gets things done? Who is known as the person to go to if you want something done? Now, maybe that's the person you need to know better than you know them now. Find out how they operate. Why did they get that reputation as the person that gets things done? Secondly, who can be a mentor or an advocate? Now, people know about mentors. Mentors are people you go to when you need advice, people that guide you along your career path. But you also need advocates. Those are people who speak positively about you to others. You need both. Maybe there's a mentor or an advocate on your relationship map. The next bullet is build alliances and advisory boards. Who do you have on your map that you could use as a teaming opportunity to prepare yourself for some upcoming project? What alliances can you make to make that project go better? Also, you need an advisory board. Well, what's an advisory board? That's just a group of people who are sounding boards. That might be somebody outside your organization. It might be a neighbor. It might be a spouse. But this is somebody to get a second opinion from if you need it. A warning, never gossip, never criticize anybody. If you're at the coffee pot and you participate in criticizing someone or in gossiping about it, understand this. When you leave that group of people you've been gossiping with, you're leaving them with the impression that you're capable of gossiping about them as well. You're capable about criticizing them as well. Don't get involved in that. That erodes trust. It's not good for you. It's not good for the team. Now, an aside here I want to make is this. What we've been talking about thus far in these secrets is a lot about you and you leaving a good impression about you and you building a network about you. Don't get me wrong, it's not about you. It's about making you the best person you can be for the organization. It's about delivering the best service you can deliver. Here's a tip. The way not to get a mentor is to walk into that person's office and ask them, will you be my mentor? A better strategy is to find somebody whose wisdom you admire in the organization. Go to that person and ask them for some genuine counsel that you need. Take that counsel, come back to that person later and tell them how it went. What you've told them is, I'm willing to be your protege. It's up to them whether or not they take you up on that and decide to be your mentor. That brings us to the next secret of politically savvy people.
All right, Jason, let's pause there. Network. Let's assess ourselves on network and the size of the network and how well you understand the skills and the capabilities of your network. Gossip and talk negative, that's pretty clear cut. And connecting parts of your network, not for your own benefit, for their network, for their benefit. So, you know, Jimmy over here and Billy over there, and they could really use each other right now because you just talked to Billy. How do you get them hooked up? How often do you do that? All right, Jason, convenience. Next segment is about the boss.
Partnering with the boss or bosses. Now, you want to do this even if your boss looks like the guy in this picture, you know, older guy, white hair, looking pretty stern. Sometimes bosses come across like they don't want to be partnered with. Trust me, they all want you to partner with them. First of all, promote the boss's priorities. That implies that you know what the boss's priorities are. Be a champion for the boss's priorities. They will appreciate that more than you realize. Secondly, master the big picture. Try to put the lenses on of your boss as you look at the organization and the projects going on and the things that are happening in your organization. I can remember one time when late in the day, the boss called me in, a team leader with other team leaders, and he told us all there was one team that was struggling with a project, and he wanted us, if we could, to help that beleaguered team with a project. We were all very busy, so most of the team leaders gave some excuses about being overloaded and left, but I saw in the boss's eye that this was really important to him, so I went back and I gave my best people up to that team that was in trouble. As it turned out, the project was a huge success. And my team's stock went up in the eyes of everybody in the organization. Didn't hurt my reputation either. The next step is include the boss. Now, we all, I think, know to include the boss on updates, and we'll probably do that regularly, but are we also stopping in and telling the boss of little successes that we have? They're interested in that. They also want to know about problems. If there's a potential problem coming around the corner, even if you're not positive it's going to manifest itself, it doesn't hurt to stop by and tell the boss what's coming at them. Boss appreciate weather warnings like that. They also appreciate it when you include the boss on little activities on your team. For example, if you're going to give an award to somebody, a certificate to somebody, or have a little celebration, invite the boss down to participate in those things. Bosses love that kind of contact with line staff, and they don't always get it. Here's somebody who did get it. Who is it? It's the Fish and Wildlife Service. On this slide, on the right side, you see the Fish and Wildlife Service goals. Now, I took this a few years ago off the Fish and Wildlife website. And they list their goals. 1, 2, 3, 4 goals, right? Well, the way they show them on the website is they align their goals with their boss's goals, which is the Department of the Interior. Isn't that interesting? Why would they do that? Well, it isn't to kiss up. It isn't to brown nose. It's to show the boss that what they're going for and what they're trying to achieve will help the boss achieve what he or she is trying to achieve. The other way that helps is if the Fish and Wildlife Service needs any resources to help them with their goals, when they go to their boss, their senior headquarters, there's a good chance they're going to get it because the senior headquarters understands if I give them these resources, then indeed it will help me achieve what I want to achieve. The next secret we're going to talk about.
Pause it. All right, now go back to the assessment under boss. Assess your relationship with the boss, the degree you know your boss's priorities. Do you know the bigger picture that the boss is operating in? And how well do you communicate with the boss? Do you keep them informed and involved? Again, there may have been other factors that come to your mind in terms of what you could do better related to your boss. Just make a note of those. Talk about impulse behavior.
Talk about is regulating impulse behavior. You see the picture on the screen here? That young lady looks like she's going to either scratch herself or scream or both. We want that to be your inside behavior, not what people see on the outside. First tip, don't always say what's on your mind. Now, I know this is common sense, but it happens all too often in the workplace. I was out at a dinner one time, one night, and my boss came up to me after the dinner and she said, "Colin, tell me how I should change my leadership. What should I do differently to be more effective for the organization?" Well, I knew at that moment enough about the boss to know that she had a little bit of thin skin. So my answer was, "Boss, off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. I'll tell you what, if I do think of something in the coming days, I'll come talk to you about it." She thanked me and let it go. I found out that was the right answer. Later on, a colleague of mine got asked the same question by the same boss. He came up with a couple of things she should change about her leadership, and she never forgave him. Think about the implications before you respond to your environment or to what people are saying. Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher, said it this way: there's a difference between a reaction and a response. A reaction is what you do instantaneously, without much thought. A response is what you do after you've considered the consequences or implications of that action or that speaking that you do. Try to make most of your responses, not reactions. Also, know your hot buttons. You know pretty much on a regular basis what sets you into a place where you might display some emotions you wouldn't want to display. You know the situations. Recognize those situations and prepare to respond differently and not react emotionally when you hit your hot buttons. Here's a tip. Use what I call the self-management two-step. If you know that we're at work or at home, you find yourself in a situation on a regular basis, it's not happened once, it's not happened twice, maybe 3 or 4 times, where your button has been pushed and you respond unhelpfully to the relationships at home or the relationships at work. Identify those times. That's the first step. Just sit down and identify those times when you respond unhelpfully. Secondly, choose a strategy to try to do it differently the next time. Maybe it's taking a deep breath. Maybe it's taking a drink of water. Maybe it's counting to 10. Do what strategy works for you for those situations. The next and last secret.
All right. Thank you, Jason. All right. So spend a minute assessing yourself on impulse behavior, responding rather than reacting, hot issues, hot button issues. Any other notes you want to add? Maybe there's somebody in your workplace that doesn't control their impulse behavior. Maybe you want to make a note for them. The final characteristic on change. I think this was a very important one.
Secret is anticipate change. The only thing that's constant in our government life is that changes are going to be constant. First, read the tea leaves. You can kind of tell what's coming around the corner at you. Colin Powell used to say it this way. He wanted to hire leaders who could see around corners and kind of guess what was coming at him so he could prepare the environment to receive that. Now, what you need to be is you need to be a future scout. Bosses love future scouts. Bosses love people that start the conversation at the meeting this way. What will be the impact of fill in the blank? The new senior boss coming, the impending budget cuts, whatever you see coming around the corner. How should we get ready for fill in the blank? Start by asking those questions, not coming up at the meeting and announcing that you know what's going to happen, because we really don't know everything that's going to happen to us. But the boss will appreciate somebody who's going to be a future scout in this way. Before I leave you, I want to remind you of these 6 secrets so that you can remember them and employ them in the way you operate at work. Remember to practice situational awareness at meetings and understanding.
All right, so the final segment, change. Let's assess ourselves. How able are we to see around the corner, to see what change might be coming up? Who do you go talk to about innovation, about new ideas, about what's happening somewhere else? Do you think about what might happen, the change that's going on and the implications, the ripples? Do you see around the corner? Are you a future scout? And are you often prepared for things that happen, for the change that occurs? Are you the one in the organization that's usually prepared or a step ahead of everybody else? All right, take a minute and assess yourself. Do you see change for your customers or just the IT unit? Do you anticipate change for your customers and what might be coming down the pike for them? And what I'd like for us to do now, as you're finishing up your thoughts, is we're going to break out into new breakout groups. So you're going to have new folks in your small groups. So reintroduce yourself and just talk about your reactions to this content. I chose this video, first of all, because I think it gives a pretty good framework about what political savvy is. Nothing magical about it. You may have some other characteristics you'd like to add to the list. Perfectly fine. But I think the video gives a nice list. Also, I've provided the video link so you can go back and visit it, revisit it, or share it with some of your folks in the office. And it gave us just a good basis foundation to assess ourselves. So as we break into the small groups, are you comfortable with the characteristics, the 6 characteristics? What might you add? And talk about what your one strength out of these characteristics is, and one area you might want to really work on a little bit. So we're going to spend 15, 20 minutes. Let's come back at 11:40. We'll come back at 11:40, and that'll give you a little time to have the conversation. And again, reintroduce yourselves, find a facilitator to report back out when we come back together. So Cassie, at your convenience, if you would break us into groups, and we'll be back in about 20 minutes. So I'm interested to know about conversations in the small groups. Were there particular characteristics that seemed to resonate more with the others? And did you have any others to add to the list? So can we have one of the groups share part of their conversation?
I can begin.
Great, Erin.
Breakout group number 7. With Jonathan and Jeremy, myself, and Brian Linton. We talked mainly about the fact that relationships were pretty high for us. And because of that, you know, with relationships being so high, everybody except for me, I think, had very good or high with networking. I'm new to this leadership role, so I'm very well adept at networking within my organization, but with my peers, it's been a little bit more difficult. And the situational awareness we talked about as well, as far as reading the room and understanding our different groups. Also, with the networking, one of the biggest takeaways from our group was that using the GMIS, this cohort, and our certifications, I'm hoping and learning that I'm not the only person that's having these various issues, and that with regards to networking, that I will be able to kind of lean on some of my team members here within our group, and maybe get some assistance when there's some issues that I'm just like pulling my hair out or not understanding, that other people have gone down this path, and that will help as far as you know, with networking outside. But for the most part, our group, we were very high with our relationships and the people in our organization and understanding our organizations.
Good, excellent. And an excellent point about networking within your association. I think that's a great example. So thank you, Erin. Appreciate that. How about another group?
Well, our group, Takia Thomas and Don Moody, oh gosh, now David and Reggie, we discussed that there was something left off, and that was listening. And that so often, you know, you've got to listen first to then be able to assess what's going on in the room, to be able to assess the other folks. And I'm afraid I was in that several of those things or we got off into the introverts and extroverts and the studies that go on in our Gov 360 course. And I was reminding everyone of the benefits of our CGCIO course, and that you learn people and how they are and your own strengths and weaknesses. So listening, though, one of the things that I have room for improvement on is another key factor.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Steve. How about one more group?
Breakout 5, we had Alex, Vicky, Brett, and myself, and we, believe it or not, we all scored basically the same, medium to high on everything. And Vicky said she was an introvert and scored low in a couple of areas on networking. So that got us focused on networking and we talked extensively about making bib and networking. You know, with Brett's got a big turnover, and so networking became the focus on how you continue to function with such a huge turnover. And it's very, very important to get out and meet people and stay focused. But he's got a big challenge with such a bunch of new faces, and budgetary challenges and elected political challenges. So we focused a lot on what issues we would deal with on handling the networking.
Good, good. Well, David and everyone else, thank you for sharing what your group talked about. Hopefully this list has been helpful to you. For those of you who scored fairly high on this list, I think it's important to find where your cutting edge might be. And so you may need to take this assessment to the next level and really find out where your cutting edge might be. Also, those who scored higher, how can you help others who may not be scoring so high, others at work? How can you help them understand what political savvy is and maybe some areas where their cutting edges might be? So thank you for that, and hopefully that's helpful for you. We're going to pivot on this last piece, change. And we're going to now do a tool to help us think about change. And the way Colin Dunn talked about it, he said, looking around the corner, who are the future scouts? How do we see what's coming down the pike? And that's an important trait of political savvy. So I'm going to introduce a couple of models to you, and then we're going to go back into the same small groups, and you're going to work through these models until lunch. And if we need some more time after lunch, we can set aside some more time for that. So there's three levels I want to look at. One is assessing the external environment from a high level. What's going on out there, generally speaking, in the political environment, the economic environment, social, technological, legal, environmental. You can maybe add many other to this list. You can probably break this list into smaller bites, whatever it takes to understand and assess the external environment that's going to impact your organization, your particular proposal, and what you're trying to achieve. And so I think associations are a good place to go and get understanding the internet. I think having group meetings to talk about these things are very helpful too. I think there's another level that's really important though, a little bit more important, and it's more specific. And it's more, how do things out there impact us here in our organization? And so that might be funding. What are our funding sources and what's the threat to those? What's the local economy doing? We've had a plant close down or one open up. We've got new demands for service that are happening. Performance expectations have changed in the community. And speaking of that, it's the external environment that shapes citizens' expectations for us. So who do you think sets expectations for government and customer service?
Citizens.
Right, but where do they get their expectations from?
Facebook.
There you go.
Well, the private sector, the other businesses in the world that do it.
There you go.
Chick-fil-A's and everybody else like that. And
that's exactly what I had in mind. Chick-fil-A sets customer service expectations for government. And so, and we all know this. So are we responding to that? Do we identify that? Who sets expectations in terms of turnaround time for deliverables? I would argue Amazon. I want to click it. I want to get it right now. I want to get it tomorrow. How come government can't do that? Again, that's the expectation in the external environment. How are we responding to that? Moving on, workforce. How are elections going to change our business? How does media treat us? How does technological change impact us? And so this is where you kind of bring it a little bit closer to home from the broad factors in the external environment to a little bit more specific in how it's impacting us in our local community. And then finally, force field analysis, and I'm sure many of you have seen this. What are the driving forces on and I would suggest we look at this from a proposal standpoint, at very specific. What are we trying to get done specifically? Although you can look at this from a mission standpoint, your organization, like a city or county, or maybe even your IT division. But what are the driving forces for a particular proposal? And what are the forces resisting this proposal from moving forward? And this force field analysis is a good way of taking from the very broad environmental to the specific environmental to this particular proposal, what's going on. And it helps us understand those forces, what their foundations might be in the external environment, and how we can impact those driving forces. We want to increase those. The resisting forces, we want to mitigate those. So if we identify them, then we can come up with strategies to either grow them or mitigate them. And again, you can do this various levels. Maybe the external environment is against your mission. Now, I don't know if folks are against IT, maybe they're against big brother watching over my shoulder with technology. That may be an element, but it may be your organization, the city or county, it may be your division. Somebody's against or for the IT division for various factors. But I think for purposes of the exercise we're about to do, if you've got a particular proposal that somebody wants to share, you can pick your IT division to talk about this, but as specific as you can get in this next exercise, the better. So what I'd like, and that's the strategies for and against. So what I'd like for y'all to do in page 5 and 6 in your workbook, in your small groups, is decide on what kind of proposal or what level you want to talk about. But then talk about general factors in the environment, maybe 5 minutes on that. Maybe another 5 minutes on specific factors for your organization. The IT, and I would suggest IT organization, make it a little bit more generic there. And then as you go to the force field, that's when you want to get as specific as possible in terms of driving forces and resisting forces. We're probably not going to have time to develop strategies today. So if you can do the first 3, I think that's great. We're going to stop at 12:15. And if group facilitators, well, we're going to come back together at 12:15, probably a few minutes before. And I'm just going to check in before we break for lunch. So in your small groups, talk about general factors in the environment, specific factors for IT organizations, and then a force field analysis for a specific proposal, if you can come up with one in your group. Hopefully that's clear. Cassie, if you would go ahead and break people into groups, and we'll see you about 12:13. All righty, so welcome back. Want to regroup before we break for lunch. First of all, I want to admit that I gave you 15 to 20 minutes to do what sometimes takes weeks and weeks to accomplish. So do we need more time after lunch to continue this? Group facilitators, do you need more time?
Only if you want us to accomplish it.
Aaron, how far did you get?
We were finishing up on political and pestle.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. And that gives you an example of how deep and how complex these issues can get, and you get bogged down in them, and you want to explore them and understand them. So I'm going to give you a little bit more time when we come back from lunch, just to kind of go through really all through it, but particularly the driving forces. So I'll set that up when we come back from lunch. Also, while you're at lunch, if you would get out your workbooks and read about Bill Kelly, Cultivating Power Centers. If you would read that quick, it's about 2.5-page case study. Shouldn't take you too long, but that's going to set up a conversation that we're going to have when we come back for lunch. So we'll put this environmental assessment on pause. We'll come back, pick it back up after lunch, and we'll be back together at 1:15. So Cassie or Jason, anything else you want to add before we break?
Everything's good on my end. Thanks, Sid.
Okay, we'll see y'all at 1:15. Hope you enjoyed your lunch. I ate my wife's leftover Chinese food. I hope she's not too upset when she gets home, but hopefully that'll get me through the rest of the day. All right, so thank you so much for your participation so far. We've come a long way, and we're in the middle of an exercise, and I'm going to give you some more time to keep working on this exercise. Just as a reminder, Colin Dunn gave us a list of characteristics of political savvy. One of those was assessing the environment, and specifically talking about people who can look around the corner and see what's coming, future scouts. And so that's what we're looking at right now and doing an exercise. And I'm going to give us 20 more minutes to finish this. And facilitators, I'm going to need your help sticking with it, because this could take a lot of time. But the purpose here is A, to introduce you to these models and tools, and B, just to wrestle with it a little bit to get a feel for the nature of the work, the nature of looking around the corner. And so if you would, let's start with the middle section, which is the specific environmental factors, and spend about 5 minutes there, going from the general factors to more specific factors. And then after about 5 minutes, go into the driving forces, this force field analysis. And as a group, if you could, it'd be better to find a specific proposal. If somebody has a specific proposal they're trying to get through the city or the county, or one they just went through, hopefully somebody will have an example, and go through the forces that were driving that change versus resisting that change, that proposal. And we're going to stop there. You could go on at the bottom of the page in your workbook. For each of those factors, forces, either driving or resisting, you could come up with strategies. But we're not going to do that today. You can do that later. So again, 20 more minutes. We'll come back about, I guess that's 1:40. We'll come back, and facilitators, 5 minutes on the specific factors, and then the balance of the time on the force field analysis. If you have any questions or issues, send us a chat. Otherwise, we'll see you in about 20 minutes. Thank you. We've been wrestling with the external environment using this tool. So I'd like to hear from a couple of groups about their experience going through this.
Well, we weren't ready yet. We were having great discussions. It was super valuable. And actually adding that new dynamic of 3 new people to our group was amazing. So had a pretty cool group coming back there. Not that we didn't before, but adding those 3 people was awesome. It added a dynamic that we didn't have, and they brought in some wisdom from their other groups that we didn't have yet in our group. So it was kind of cool that it worked out that way. There was a positive spin on it. So we didn't have time to get through much. I'll just very briefly kind of talk about what we went through on the pestle stuff. We did not make it over to the force field analysis yet. Hopefully, maybe you're going to give us more time for that. I don't know. But on pestle, we discussed things that had an impact on our environment that were kind of recent events, on our external events that had an impact on our, we just analyzed on our IT environment or our local government environment. So we just kind of, what of these events, what events are there in the political, economic, social, technical, and what effects do they have? So real quick, political, we had election, coronavirus, recent racial unrest, or this forced created division, or maybe even a false perception of division that wasn't there, and cancel culture were some of the events that have an impact. And some of the impacts they might have are election, depending on who's in office, there could be a tremendous difference in funding, positive or negative. Since the elections involve local elections, there could be a tremendous change in leadership, which could affect new priorities, or an absence of priorities that we've been working towards. Now they go away, and all that work goes thrown away, and you have a new set of priorities. So they in a 1 to 10, they could have a tremendous impact, these external factors of the election. Coronavirus, it was interesting to hear how the group responded to this, because honestly, they named off the positives before they named off the negatives. There was a rapid uptake in remote work, which made an increase uptake in technology use and adoption. It caused this tremendous change in the way we worked, caused a fresh look at processes that maybe are the way we've always done them. And now we have a reason to look at processes. And so we gained a tremendous amount of efficiency on this. I think across the board, everyone in our group agreed that they were able to be far more efficient at home than they were at the office. And I think the number one factor was less interruptions. Mm-hmm. And that's something we could really have a robust discussion on, but we didn't have time to kind of take it down that track and see why. There were a few negatives. Obviously, that change in the dynamics of the workforce took some getting used to. And we had a loss of personnel as people got sick and other people got affected. And so we were working with a shorter staff kind of across the whole county, not just in our departments. The recent racial unrest, kind of this created division that's happened in our country, whether it's real or it's perceived or a combination thereof. There were a lot of pros that came out of it. Obviously, we all know what the negatives are. Division's bad, but the pros that came out of it were becoming more aware of what we do and say, and realizing that our conversations are tied to our image, not only as an enterprise or a county or an entity, but as an individual as well. And this will play later into the cancel culture as well. I thought the thing that was exciting to me was this increased desire to understand the perspective of the other side. And it wasn't that there wasn't a desire to understand the perspective beforehand, but I don't think the perception was that there was still that big need to have an understanding. And it became very aware that there were maybe some needs for us to understand perspectives on the other side that we didn't really realize existed. And so there were, positives that could come out of that. The cancel culture, I didn't even know what the cancel culture was. They had to tell me. I Googled it and figured it out. And once they defined it for me, I hadn't heard that buzzword. I get it. It's this idea that things you say on social media could be either taken for what they were intended or taken out of context, that the way that they're received then cause an offense, and that offense ruins careers and offices and agencies and so on. And there was this general sense that the cancel culture has the opposite effect of innocent until proven guilty. That there was a danger that the perceived precedence is taking, that the perceived intent is taking precedence over reality. And that's really it for election. The other ones, very briefly, COVID was in every single category. COVID was an outside event that affected political, economic, social, technological, legal, and everything. It's all the way down the board. And I'll jump ahead to social. COVID affected, obviously, where are we today? We're having a meeting online when we should be meeting physically. Big impact. It's changed our focus. Offices are closed. Court has changed. So socially, it's had a tremendous difference in the way that we live our lives, in the way that we buy food, in the way that we shop. I mean, it's had a tremendous difference on even the way that we receive packages here at Lowndes County. They don't want you to sign anything anymore. They're now dropping these packages outside our door, which is a problem when they're, $100,000 servers or pieces of equipment to go in the data center. They don't want you to touch it or evaluate it, or it's just so you had to adjust to that. Legal and regulatory. How did COVID affect that? Well, a lot of us sitting here today live in a city or county that has a mask ordinance. So that's your regulatory. And legally, it caused one entity here and us as well to establish a workforce, or I'm sorry, a work from home plan that never existed before. So they had to come together and create this work from home plan and get it through the commission and the stakeholders and get it approved. And now they have an official plan that before this, they never really would have done. They never would have had a need to. And a lot of the leadership is that 55 and over crowd that didn't have a value in working from home. There was no, we want that face to face. So it's jumped ahead the adoption of technology that already existed. So there've been positive and negative effects in many of those areas. And I'll end it there so another group can share.
Thank you, Aaron. And that's a great example of the depth that you got to go into to think about these things. And COVID's a great example of one event that has ripples everywhere. And you tied it back to what was the implications in these other areas. And, how do we vote and have public input in an era of COVID? And a lot of regulations had to change with that. So thank you, Aaron, for that. I would like to hear from a group that maybe got to the force field analysis. Was any group able to hit the force field?
We did that.
All right, Clark.
Group 8. So we actually did it twice. We picked a couple of different proposals. We took a couple of different projects. The first one was installing new firewalls using some CARES Act funding. And some of the driving forces were, well, the funding was available. The technology was outdated and sort of in line for an upgrade. Increased security was another driving force. Another driving force was increased bandwidth and power, if you will, increased processing and memory and that sort of thing to help with the increased demand on teleworking, so that the firewalls can be a choke point. And so those are all driving forces for the firewall project. Resisting forces had to do with a shortage of staff. I don't think we put this down, but the supply chain issues that have happened because of COVID, getting those things in time, having older staff that maybe didn't know the new technology. In this particular case, the organization has a fairly strict set of protocols, only allowing 1 or 2 people in the office at a time from the IT group. And so that sort of limits, the skill set and who can actually be on site to actually do this work. So that was a resistant force. The vendors themselves during this policy were not allowed to come on site for this particular municipality. And the risk factors like potential downtime during cutover. And what does that mean now that we're in a telework environment? The second one that we talked about project was a proposal to run a fiber optic network between county government, school systems, 4 cities, and a water authority. This is a project I worked on, and the driving forces behind that one were cost reduction, freedom from the carriers that are out there, like AT&T and Comcast, et cetera, agility, increased security. What else did I put down? I can't read my writing. let's see, some of the resisting forces that we saw in that particular project involved the incumbent carriers were extremely resistant and had lots of resources to throw at it, lobbyists and things like that, that they actually sent to Board of Commissioner meetings, to city councils. We know that they did in public. We don't know what they did behind the scenes, but we feel certain that there was a lot of activity visiting commissioner shops and that sort of thing at various times with their opposition. There was a general sort of consensus, not really consensus, there was a faction of vocal citizens who were adamantly opposed to the government competing with any private industry. So you had a group of citizens that just really didn't like the government at all, and they really didn't want the government getting into competing with the private sector. Let's see what else. We also have, we're in a position of political unrest. We had the chairman of the Board of Commissioners at the time used to work for the previous chairman, got fired and came and ran for chairman, won, and was sort of on a tirade to get rid of everybody that this person thought that ever did him wrong. And so we really weren't being progressive about anything. They were really more of in a vindictive mode. And so that was certainly a resistant force to any kind of progress, particularly to that project. And then there was some, I won't call this maybe resistant forces, but there were some concerns around the long-term commitments from 4 cities, a county government, and a school system, all with different elected bodies, to work together well over a long period of time. Those are 2 different sort of proposals or projects that we analyzed.
Good. Thank you, Clark. And those 2 are great examples. And I think y'all got to a level of detail that was intended in this exercise. And those things make a difference. And those are the things that are going to help your proposal or stop it dead in its tracks. So thank you for sharing that. And so I wish we had more time to go through these exercises a little bit more, but unfortunately we don't. But I think hopefully in this time, that short time we've had using it, that you see it's a great tool and a great discipline we talk about these events a lot. We don't think about them with purpose and with diligence and trying to fully understand the implications. And this tool is something to help us bring a discipline to our thinking about what's going on out there and how it's going to impact what we're trying to do in here. So if you're having problems, you may have misalignment. So look at it in the external environment and see where this misalignment might be. If you can't make progress on a proposal, this is a tool that you can use to say, hey, what are we running into? Why are we having so much of a challenge here getting this done? And the broader end of this, it may be helpful to better understand your client's needs and what value you bring to them. And so this exercise may be helpful to understand customer needs a little bit better. So hopefully this is a tool you can take back to the workplace and maybe continue this conversation with folks in your office and try to understand, man, there's a lot going on out there. How's it impacting us? How can we get out in front of this a little bit better? So hopefully this is a good tool to use. And I wish we had more time, but we don't. So we're going to move on. And Colin Dunn, in his video that we watched, also talked about stakeholders and networks and understanding stakeholders and responding to them. So what we're going to do now is break up into brand new groups. We're going to shuffle the deck a little bit. And what I want you to do is talk about, hopefully you've already read it. If you haven't read it, you've got about 20 seconds to read it. And talk about 4 questions. And they're all there in the back of the article. So I'm not going to take time reading through these. But the idea is, who are the stakeholders and what did Bill Kelly do to advance his agenda? So Cassie, if you would, go ahead and break us into groups and we'll come back. We're going to spend 30 minutes on this, having this conversation. So facilitators, please pace yourself to cover these 4 questions in 30 minutes. All right, thank you and see you in a minute. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you like this article. It's one of my favorite articles, and there was a typo in it. It wasn't 1996, it was 1966. So it's a little dated, but I think it's a great article. So let's unpack it a little bit. And if a group would mind sharing, who were the stakeholders identified by Bill Kelly?
I'll take a few.
All right.
His sergeant, Shriver, obviously was one of the stakeholders. The potential students of the Job Corps, Congress, both parts of Congress, the Job Corps staff, and the Bureau of Budget.
Okay, that's an excellent list. And Takia, why would you say he focused on them?
Because when it fell in his lap, it was a doozy, and he had to fix it. So these were stakeholders that would, especially the Congress and the Bureau of Budget, would be able to help him to clean it up.
Okay.
To make it a viable school and make them, use the school, because I guess it was compared to other schools because it was so expensive and it wasn't viable. So he did all the work and he played the middleman to fix it.
Yeah. So in short, he needed he needed them. They were various groups that he needed to be successful in what he was trying to achieve. So Takia, thank you for that. So how about a different group? How did Bill Kelly influence his stakeholders? What did he do?
This Clark from, I forget what group we're in. Well, he did a number of different things. He first thing he did was he reduced the cost per student. So he had a tangible, some metrics that he could go, then and, tout his good works already with. He also changed the purchasing policy to allow these 123 local community centers the ability to pay their local people. So he garnered and created sort of a groundswell of support from all these 123 communities.
So let me interrupt you, Clark. So he changed the procurement policy. And what was the first one you said? He
reduced the cost per student by increasing the number of, or increasing the number of beneficiaries to the program.
Yeah, so those are 2 fairly specific, and I would call them technical activities that he did. He changed his recruiting policy. He changed his procurement policy. Were those technical or were those political actions?
Yes.
Yes, exactly. All right. What else did he do to influence his stakeholders?
He visited with all of those stakeholders individually. He made personal connections with every single one of them. He also addressed every single complaint and every single error that came in. And he did those in a very personal way, and he communicated that with all those stakeholders.
So it was high touch, very high touch, high relationship.
High touch, high relationship, absolutely.
Yep.
He spent a lot of time. He also used his contacts that he had through the White House, and he used his sphere of influence with anyone he had in his previous positions to be able to get his word out, get his point across, and tried to sort of angle in any way he could.
Yep, great points, great points. And
forget the press.
I would add, he didn't just focus on the congressional members, he also worked on the staff members as well. So he knew the support staff were very influential, and he needed them as well. So how about another group? What was he trying to accomplish? What was his end goal?
Keep the organization going.
What's that, Dan?
Keep the overall organization alive and going.
Okay, all right. Do you think he cared about the kids, the customers?
That would be the ultimate end goal, yeah.
Yeah, it didn't speak to that in the article, but you wonder, I mean, was this just for his career, just for his program? Did he care about the kids? And we really don't have some answers there, but kind of the point I want to make is, yes, he was trying to sustain his program, which was his job, but the personal things and the customer things, they all kind of get bundled up in there, and it's hard to parcel out what my personal interest is in this versus my professional interest in this. And so I'm sure Bill was fighting for his job as much in reputation as much as anything, but he was going for the program and the sustainability of the program as well. Daniel, anything else you want to add to that, or is that
I think he was just a good facilitator, trying to draw all the different groups together,
yeah,
in order to accomplish the final goal of keeping it alive.
Yeah,
He used his expertise, used whatever information he had, and he also used the power of his office or his prestige of his bosses in order to accomplish what he needed to do, keep it alive.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So how about a different group? What did Bill Kelly consider to be his main role as the leader of the organization?
This is Victoria. We spoke about that he viewed himself as the manager, the fiduciary of the program, but we viewed him more as a leader. He exhibited leadership qualities. He had that end goal in mind, and he did what was needed to accomplish that end goal. But we believe that he viewed himself more as a manager.
Okay. And he did tell his boss he was a manager, not an educator.
Yes.
I like that. And, but elsewhere in the article, let me ask, did any other groups have a little bit different viewpoint? Was he a manager?
He said he was a politician.
Yeah. Yeah. And he was both. I mean, it's hard to parcel out these different roles, but the third, I'll call the second, the third paragraph in the second page, he said, Kelly devoted his time and attention not to traditional management functions, but the cultivation of power centers around him. Did that surprise y'all? Do you agree with that? Is that something you see your role as a leader? Chime in.
Yes.
Okay. Is that easy to do?
No.
Okay. So I'm hearing from Clark that we agree with Bill Kelly as his take on his role. It's I have to be a politician. I can't focus on just the organization itself. Even though he changed procurement policy. He changed other things that seem to be a little organizational technical, but he was at heart a politician, and he cultivated those power centers, which is what we're focused on now. So also, let me hear from a different group. What was your reaction to the 2 caveats regarding our system of government? Anybody? Old groups can chime in.
Well, we had just pointed out, to us, it seemed like it was reflected negatively, the structure. That, but we didn't feel like his process was negative. We didn't feel like the process that he went through with reaching out to stakeholders, to opening up that communication, to media, and to the committee, we didn't feel like that was a very negative thing. But the way the article was written to us came across a negative tone towards the government.
Yeah, it may be instructive to know this was an HBR, a business article, reporting on government. And so you may have gotten that kind of a bias in this article for sure. Victoria, let me ask you this. Did y'all talk about, the quote in there was, our system of government gives the Bill Kellys of the world a hunting license to acquire power, and divided power favors the end runner. Did y'all unpack that at all or react to that?
Unfortunately, no, we did not. We did not talk about that specifically.
All right, did any other groups bring that out?
We did, but we talked about, sort of the checks and balances that are in place, that no single person really can make a decision by themselves. We also talked about how Bill was savvy, and that his prowess in being savvy allowed him, to be able to save the program. We said that it was good in a way that, the system is set up because it offers more than one avenue to get things done. We talked about there's more than one way to skin a cat. When he hit roadblocks, he would back up and find a different way around. Then we also talked about that it's bad and that it was slow and messy, that it's inconvenient and it's not very agile. However, where there's a will, there's a way in this scenario.
Yeah. And I like the term hunting license. I think the general public would really react to this admission that we give certain bureaucrats a hunting license to go accumulate all the power they can, to use it any way they can to help their program. And I think without limits, I would react that way too. But even within the limits, I think there's a reaction to that, which I think to get something done in government in an environment of divided power, you've got to have some kind of license to go accumulate power, accumulate a consensus to get anything done at all. And so I wanted to pull that out of this article. So let me just stop for a minute. Any other comments before I just debrief?
I was going to expand on that just a little bit. It's a double-edged sword. It really depends on the person with the hunting license. You can create a very useful, effective bureaucracy, or you can create a monster. And I think we have examples of both in our government.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why originally, earlier today, we talked about the Baddeley and James political skills model that brought in that ethical piece. And, am I doing this just for myself or am I oriented toward the community in the whole? So Chris, I think you're dead on. Absolutely. So ethics and morals do matter in this. And we're relying on people to exercise that power appropriately.
Well, we did make a comment that, the who's who in this story sort of read out of a chapter of Watergate.
Yes, absolutely. It is dated. It's very dated. And if anybody comes across an article this good that's more up to date, I sure would like to see it. Any other comments? Any other reactions to this article? Okay, well, we're going to move ahead. Let me make a couple of other comments about this article. And as I do, remember our role as public leaders trying to get things done. So we talked about the situation and who some of the major players were, what he did in this. I thought it was very interesting, the fact that staff were not necessarily loyal to their boss, and they became a stakeholder group in and of themselves that had their own interests. So I wanted to pull that out as well. I not only identifying the stakeholders and whether they support or resist your particular proposal or your organization, but how they come together. And I think it was very instructive how Bill Kelly played one another or set certain things in motion to benefit him. And I'll give you one example. and that was how he worked the communities. And, which communities did he pick? And I'm sure he chose strategically those communities, in particular congressional districts, that matched up with his committees. I'm sure he also, when the procurement, he changed the procurement rules, he thought about which businesses are in which communities that needed to have certain purchases. So which businesses played out in his mind, and he acted accordingly. He created advisory groups to bring in the communities a little closer too. And who sat on those advisory committees? I'm sure people who could help him. And so he worked with his staff, I'm sure, to pick who would be on those advisory groups. And he also changed where the shops, the training centers in communities would do certain projects, which also got the communities back on board, which helped with the congressional. And I'm sure the projects he picked to support were politically advantageous as well. He also he said he worked with the media. Well, I'm sure the media, he corresponded with some of those communities. And which data did he share? I'm sure it was the data he wanted to get out there that was advantageous to him. So again, he put a lot of these stakeholders in motion to come together to get the support he needed with the key constituencies that he needed. His role, we talked a lot about that. Fiduciary of a program, combination of technical and political tasks. The same action had political and technical implications. So I think that's important to keep in mind. What's the political implications of your technical task that you do? And we talked about staff as a power center. Don't assume they're on board with you. So where would you say, Chris, kind of to your point, where would you say Bill Kelly is in this model?
Somewhere between clever and wise, I think.
Okay, all right. So he was very well politically aware, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we're just wondering about his ethical orientation and what drove him at that point.
Yep.
And if it was all about the program and the customers, we consider him wise.
Wise.
If it dipped into his personal issues and maybe friends, who made money in the deal, I don't know. But we
don't get anything from the article as to what his motivation was.
We don't. And so let's not read too much into it, but in the real world, we know it's a big ball of different motivations. And so we won't cast aspersions on Bill Kelly. But let me ask you this. If you were Bill Kelly's boss and he was working against you, would you have fired Bill Kelly?
No, he did his job.
He did his job, okay.
Within the confines of what he was given and the government organizations that he was working with.
Okay. Anybody else?
Give him a raise.
Give him a raise. He got it done. Okay.
Obviously, he's politically savvy, so and he had the right focus. So I think that's the kind of people we need in government.
All right.
Well, I'll speak in.
Depends on whether or not I was trying to save myself.
William P. Kelly was retired in '69, and he was really working with LBJ, the previous president. So would you have fired him? They thought so because they retired him out of politics, and he went to work for the Kennedy Center or somewhere like that. So, so the truth is that they thought he was out of line because even the rest of Congress let him be retired after this. So that's really the rest of the story. That's why I'd been quiet. But since they came up with, would you have fired him? I don't know if I would have or not, but the people that were his bosses did.
Eventually.
In that year, 69. So, a win for the Job Corps might have been a win for him because, politically, I don't know, whatever he went to work for might have been a better deal. because government retirement's pretty good to go have another full-time job. And I can speak from actual experience on that.
Yep, yep. Anybody else? Would you have fired Bill Kelly if you were his boss?
I say no, because his boss dropped this bad egg in his lap to begin with. And he wasn't an educator, he made that clear. So he got it dropped in his lap and he cleaned it up and fixed it and made it a good thing. So no, it would be in the boss's best interest to not fire him.
Ah, in his best interest. Okay. So my next question, could somebody have fired Bill Kelly? We know the rest of the story at this point, but
well, clearly they could have if he got fired.
Yeah, yeah. But we know the rest of the story at this point.
Well,
but he had a lot of political clout is what I'm saying. He was politically power enough to save his program, maybe not himself.
yeah, I mean, the boss that put him into place is not the one he ended up with.
Yeah.
Because they moved him over to the other department with a different boss.
Yeah, that's right. Good point. Good point. So if Bill Kelly worked for you today and showed this kind of behavior, would you fire him?
No.
Okay. Anybody else?
Might have a come to Jesus moment, just, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to tease out how Bill Kelly may have been counter to the goals in the career of his boss. Maybe reading too much into that, but that's the issue. And if that did come to be where you and your subordinate had opposing issues, even though they're politically proficient and very powerful, you may have to have that conversation with them. Yeah.
Well, your job as an employee is to make your boss look good.
Yes.
Now, did he make his boss look good in the end? Yes. Did he inform his boss along the way? Maybe no. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
I can give you one other debate to that though. If the intention was for this plan to fail and they gave it to him with the hopes that he was going to fail, he made his boss look stupid.
Yes.
If his boss was preaching, oh, it's going to fail, we're going to give it to Kelly, it's going to fail, it's going to fail, and then he pulled off what he did, his boss is sitting there looking crazy right now with egg on his face.
Yeah. And if the president's, one of his major campaign promises is to get rid of your program and you work counter to that, there's, as we've already said, there are personal risks in the public sector for sure.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I would have fired him, because anytime you've got somebody that's working against you, that's just not somebody you want around you. I'll just be honest.
I'd have to
you're supposed to be a team, and like y'all said earlier, you're supposed to make your boss look good. And if you're working 100% against your boss, that's not cool. So
Come to Jesus first. Come to Jesus.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jonathan Reich?
I hate to fired him.
Now, see, I don't appreciate that assumption. That's not necessarily true. I mean, it's pretty close. I think I might have, but I think you're a part of the team. You can disagree with the team. You could be your own person, and that's fine. There's something about breaking that chain of command. It really does something to you, in my opinion.
Communication can be viewed as insubordination.
Communication.
Yeah, agreed.
Jonathan, remember the side of the room we stood on when Gov 360? I mean, that's messing with that chain of command. There's got to be some real good reasons for doing it. So anyhow, it all plays in.
Agreed.
Well, something to think about. But the main point of this article was Bill Kelly's ability to work his stakeholders. He was a master at working his stakeholders, understanding which ones he needed, doing the right things, the technical and the political activities to get them on board and to use that to his advantage. So that's what I want to draw out more than anything. So
And Sid, I think the biggest mistake that he probably made was once he turned Schultz, and he did, he should have used that more to his advantage, but that was a Republican. And, you know, if you get your boss on board, even though his boss ain't on board, you can work that for a long time.
Yeah, if you've got that cover. Yeah, absolutely. All right, and the other thing I wanted to really hit home once again, we've talked about this a lot, is just our system of government and the dispersed power and the importance of the stakeholders, understanding the stakeholders and bringing those together. So we've talked about that. So thank y'all very much. It sounded like y'all had a great conversation around this, and I appreciate the feedback and the conversation. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. It's about 5 till. We're going to come back at 10 after 3. And that gives you about 15 minutes. So 3:10, let's come back and we're going to look at stakeholders. So take a little break. Appreciate everybody coming back, and we're on the back stretch of today, and really want to let you know my appreciation for your participation today. I think it's been a real good conversation. Sounds like the breakout groups have gone very well. So thank you so much for that. And so let's finish strong here. And we're going to do what Bill Kelly did in this next segment. And that is think about our stakeholders. Who do we need to be successful in our work? And so we're going to break out into new groups. And what we want you to do is think about the stakeholders for IT operations. And while you may discuss this generically in terms of stakeholders, as you talk generically, I want you to think specific, because you need to be at the individual level as much as possible for these stakeholders. But in these groups, you probably have to be a little generic. And as you identify these stakeholders, these individuals, ultimately, how much power and influence do they have over the situation? And it may change from situation to situation, so you want to apply it to specific situations, but how much power and influence do they have? What level of interest do they have in the particular issue that's going on? What is their level of support for what you're trying to achieve? And then a list, not a numeric, is what are their values? What are their interests? What do they want out of this particular situation? Or what are they trying to achieve in their own roles that may be separate from but connected to this particular situation? So this is what we'd like to fill out in the group, but let me share a couple other things. Who might stakeholders be? There may be authorizers, they provide resources. They may be partners in terms of delivering the service. So an outside stakeholder, an outside company that you've outsourced. Maybe even competitors. Yes, government groups have competitors, so think about who your competitors might be. Whose advocacy or interest groups for or against you. Employees, are they an important stakeholder group? Are they supporting you? Do they have power and influence? Maybe your clients, your users, media, etc. And again, ultimately, you want to be as specific as possible, but maybe not in this conversation you're about to have. Once you found out, have this information, you've done this assessment, you can do a quick analysis, their power and influence versus their interest. And if they have high power and influence and high interest, you need to manage them very, very closely. They are considered key players. And you can see how the others might break out in this matrix. And I believe I have that in your workbook. Hang on one second before you leave. What I'd like for you to accomplish today is just to fill out that first list. We're not going to do stakeholder strategies. We just have time for identifying stakeholders and thinking about their level of power and influence and other factors. So yes, now please go to your breakout rooms. We're going to come back at 3:40. 3:40, so please manage your time appropriately. You don't want to get bogged down necessarily on one stakeholder, but so manage your time appropriately, and we'll see you at 3:40. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
can I see the previous 2 slides to this one?
The previous 2 slides?
Yeah, I missed them.
Okay. Let's see if I can do that. Stick with me. All right, so that's the template that's in your workbook, and you want to list stakeholders, power and influence, level of interest, level of support, and their values and interests. Okay. And here's some examples of stakeholders.
Okay, I don't think I have that. Familiar to me.
This one is not in your workbook, I don't think.
Oh, just the previous one was.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.